Hey, so this is Eric,
Hi, I'm Veda. We're with AnewVista.
and so last Friday on April 11th, we had a big AI event. Beta, we had like 200 people, another 50 people in person, another 50 people online, and then of course we had a panel, right? And a kickoff by Dr. Greg Vanderhaden from University of Maryland. We were talking about artificial intelligence and how it's going to affect our seniors in the future and actually now, right?
Yes.
And so, I think we covered a lot. We had a lot of openings. It was a lot of subjects, a lot of questions. We also just didn't cover everything.
It was impossible. I mean, a lot of the questions were thematically related, so I thought we did a good job as far as, fielding the questions that were sent to us before, right? But the
Yes.
things that came from the crowd, there was some stuff to really dig into there, and we just didn't have the time.
It was long. It was already long. I was worried about it being long. I mean, when we started charting it out, it was okay, we'll do 90 minutes, but it wound up being like 2.5 hours of
I know.
content.
It was like, oh no.
So, what were your thoughts overall of the event?
I really enjoyed the way Greg, kind of teed up the event for us. He took his experience in gerontology and all the studies and stuff that he's done and really brought it to the fore in AI. AI is changing everything. And there's some really unusual risks behind it. There's some great benefits that we can see, especially as, why we started a new Vista was to help elders live independently as long as possible. And we see AI being a critical tool to that. As AI gets more and more human, it gets weird, and there's some boundaries that we're going to have to enforce, and we have no idea how. And I really love the way he teed that up for us.
Yeah, there's a lot going on there. And it's funny because as we were talking about AI and some of the questions, I was doing some work tonight and I actually corrected Gemini because they gave me the wrong answer. And so we have to be careful with what we see, and it's not always right because I already knew the answer, at least partially. And Gemini cited a source, and I corrected Gemini, and they're like, "Oh yeah, yeah, that you're right." Right. And so it is getting more human, and that's part of the problem. So
Well, anything time we have something that's more probabilistic, as the population grows, it's going to get weighted that way. So it
yeah.
almost behaves like a subconscious. It doesn't know right from wrong or truth from false. It only knows what's been repeated the most. So sometimes we have to guide it.
Yeah, it's interesting though because it gives you kind of a human response saying, "Oh yeah, you're right, you're right, you're absolutely right." But this funny one was here because we were talking about my wife's doing a paper on body shaming, right? And there was a study from the UK that talked about, how many people were not happy with their body look, their body shape, whatever. It was a UK study, and I asked Gemini about a US. It cited that same study, and I said, no, 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 this is UK, not US. And he goes, yeah, I'm already personalizing
Yeah, right.
AI. Gemini always tells me, no, no, you're right, but I'm also right because it prevails throughout the rest of the world. And I was like, wait a minute, hold on. You're rationalizing things. So it's funny because we go back to this whole AI thing. It's like it's getting closer to human. Is it going to be that know-it-all that it thinks it is? Because it's already getting sassy with me.
Right. And anytime we go after knowledge, we have to start with humility, right? Because only through humility do we realize we don't know something, which then we can be curious about it. So
So
if
that's
we
the question:
start,
is AI going to know when it's not right?
no, it
When
doesn't. That's
it's
the problem. It's only looking at all these probabilistic things, and it's very limited because it can never really experience, okay, this is me. I'm getting my philosopher's chair now, if you will.
yeah,
It can
that's
never
right.
experience real life to correct it. It's only stuck in human symbology of real life, and that's all it calculates on. So it's already abstracted from reality and it can't self-correct. So it's kind of weird.
Yeah, it's fooling a lot of people, but right now in its current state, it's what's known. It's not creation yet. And I think that's where we had a lot of questions in the conference about the difference between creativity and curiosity and in my words, my summary of what they were asking is, where's the soul? Well, it can't create a soul.
Right.
No, and it can't create those things. I do think it'll come up with it being AI will come up with some type of, you know, like I said, probabilistic outcomes based on more data that we haven't seen yet. And so it's going to come out with some new solutions because we just don't have the ability to crunch that data
Correct.
or haven't had that ability to crunch that data. So, yeah, so let's talk about, we got some feedback on the conference already that we didn't do some things. And so, well, we can kind of take some of these things down one at a time. But I personally don't think we've we fully vetted the conversation that we were just having about um, how do we know it's right or wrong, and how do we stop misinformation, which then kind of gets us into um, spam, deep fakes,
Right.
misinformation, right? All that kind of under one umbrella. And so, we have solutions for AnewVista with email, but it's really hard to deal some of those other things.
Right. I mean, I have a lot of clients that are continually being bombarded with things by text and now more and more by voicemail that it sounds like their loved one is asking for help. But it's really an AI trained on things that they scraped from Facebook and said, "Oh, okay, now we have this loved one's voice. We can scam these people." It's horrible.
So, with voice, I think we have a few solutions. If it smells like a duck and it looks like a duck, it probably is a duck, right? And so, rather than reacting, we tell people to take a deep breath and say, all right,
Yes.
is this real? Is this not real? Should we call somebody? Let's call somebody that we know that knows that person that is pretending to be calling under distress. All I know, if somebody tried to call me and said, drop a bag of cash somewhere, I think I'd be calling my daughter's boyfriend or
Oh,
whoever's around there
absolutely.
and all their
Right.
friends.
Whoever's close to him.
Yeah. And so we need to make sure people take that approach of, hey, it's a crisis, if it's again, if it seems too outworldly, um, it probably is.
Yeah, and just to preparing them that if anything kind of puts them in a sense of fear or a sense of urgency, to just slow down and think about it, and then just go, hold it. This is a red flag. How can I verify this?
Well, it's funny what you just said that because it helps me remind some of the things that we tell people to do with email. Right? We tell
Yes.
you or we tell our folks that if it's threatening or it's making some urgency to action, to stop, pause, and wait. Well, and that can be applied to phone calls and texts as well,
Yes, absolutely.
right? And take a
Anytime that
deep,
fear urgency comes up.
yeah. With emails, even though it's getting more personal and the grammar's getting better and it's written a little bit, it's written better so that we don't have these kind of, grammar mistakes. And we used to tell people that if it said dear member, it's probably spam, but now they know your name. But the one truth that seems to always be there at this point is that the sending email is always coming from somewhere else.
Right.
And so
I,
we think it's Bank of America, it says, "Hey, this is Bank of America. Your account's in danger," and it comes from a Gmail address. Right?
I was
It's
also interested in a couple of things that the panel brought up that I never heard a term before, defensive AI.
well,
So
no, that's what Google's doing though.
yeah, but I never heard the term, and I really
Yeah.
like that. We're using AIs to detect AIs. We're using AIs against AIs. It's so there are things happening that can kind of filter things for us, or maybe even shield us. But it's nice to see that there's these ongoing efforts beyond just equipping ourselves to notice it.
Yeah, let's put a period though at the conversation we were just having about what do we do with text,
Oh, okay.
right? What
Yeah,
do we do with text? What do we do if we get text that sound funny? We delete them, right?
right.
If it sounds like a duck, looks like a duck again,
Right.
we're gonna keep hearing that again. If it's a voicemail, what are we gonna do?
We're going to delete them. I'm,
We're gonna,
I,
well,
and
no,
I,
well,
I,
no, no. What we didn't say we're going to delete them. We're going to say if it's an urgency, and for example, it's a loved one, we're going to go call our loved one's friends, family, and people who are close to them.
right, we can verify.
Yes, verify first. If it's, let's say, the bank or the IRS or the UPS or USPS, right, which is really prevalent right now, we go and we check. We can find the U.S. Postal Office phone number and give them a call, but don't call the number that's on the text or
Correct.
click any links on the text. All right. So if we keep reminding people to do that stuff, I think we'll be okay. But the biggest thing is don't panic.
Right.
Right? Don't panic.
And
All right.
never interact with an unknown text or email.
Yes, exactly. Exactly right. Don't do it. Just say no. It's like Nancy Reagan, right?
Just,
Don't say
just
no.
say no.
We're gonna bring that back on it. All right, so let's go back to what we were talking about just a minute ago. We were talking about um, defensive AI, and
Right.
that brings us to this conversation that you and I have had before about we're somewhat at the mercy of the goodness of our corporate citizens,
Mm,
and that makes it difficult because we don't want companies to be co-opted because of money or greed or the profit line. We hopefully believe that our companies that are doing this goodness for everybody is going to try to keep the goodness for its users as well. But this also brings me back to what Dr. Vanderheiden said about, hey, is the AI going to be co-opted for a particular leaning one way or the other, or a particular bias one way or the other?
correct.
Did you? I mean, we know that government policy lags behind new technology, but what are your thoughts on being at the mercy of people or the companies and hoping that they're going to do the right thing?
Well, this is the hard part is, a company by definition is incorporated to or created to make a profit. So the bottom line is it's got to generate wealth that can be reinvested in itself and grow however that looks. So I don't think that alone is enough of an impetus or a guide to make something that's so revolutionary. I mean, could you imagine if we were making the, nuclear bomb program and, the Manhattan Project on a for-profit thing? Oh my gosh. I mean,
Well, I
the
mean, in
pro
some ways, it started as a novel idea that they were looking for a new energy source, but it did
yes.
get co-opted to a weapon of war.
Right. And anything that is powerful, powerful in usage or powerful in benefit is also going to have some powerful risks, right? So we need to develop stuff around that. And we're still going through that nuclear age thing. And this, I think, could be just as powerful, but in a much more devious way or a much more under the table way. We don't even know it's
Yeah.
hitting us sometimes. And that's where it's really frightening.
The hope, I guess, is to have a lot of this stuff, or some of the stuff, open source, and enough good people in the world to be able to call BS, right?
Right.
Or, I mean, we are as long as we have, knock on wood, our legal system. The legal system is one of the ways to hold the check and balances because we are a litigious society and people don't want to lose a lot of money either. And so to
Right.
be able to if there's going to be lawsuits, no matter you untie your shoe in the middle of the street and somebody falls over you, it's probably a lawsuit, right? And so
Right.
you know I think that hopefully that the threat of unhappy customers will impact profitability, which will then hopefully keep some of these companies in line.
Yeah, and as long as our institutions can be healthy too, because if we look at the rate of change in technology is fast, the rate of change in culture is slightly slower, the rate of change in law is a lot slower. And it's
Yes.
great to have that dynamic across those three areas, right?
Well, it's
Because
what
they
makes us
really
special.
exactly. And we need to have the arguments and we need both sides of the argument. We if we just have one argument winning all the time, it's going to be terrible. We need to have people that realize they don't know everything and are curious and want to know more and can actually remember doing oppositional analysis. I mean, Come on, just
Yeah.
preparing for a debate or something. Whatever happened to those disciplines and those areas of respect that, someone that we disagree with, but we respect them and want to hear their argument? Why
Well,
can't we
you
have
and I
that
both,
again?
yeah, you and I both spent a long time at Intel, and one of their
Yes,
core values was constructive confrontation.
all the
And
time.
yes, and they went a little overboard sometimes,
Well, it
right?
was so
I mean, they,
combative as a culture, but I think some good things came out of that, though.
but this is also one of the reasons why diversity is important because it's, whenever I know this is a triggering word for a lot of people because people think of DEI or whatever. We just need diversity of opinions,
Yes.
diversity of opinions, whether it's a male's perspective, a female's perspective, or a young person's perspective, or an older person's perspective. We need to have a diversity of ideas and perspectives to be able to get to some kind of better product or better technology.
Any
This is
better
one of
outcome.
and better outcomes, And so, yeah, the more I think about the goodness of these corporations, I'm hoping for the best. I'm not convinced yet. Our government moves too slow in trying to. By the time they get a law out and regulations out, it's like they've moved on. The technology has moved on to something else.
Yeah, and this has really been something that's been, tickling the back of my brain because I keep thinking of things that, we can spin out of what we're learning here and do a for-profit type of thing. But our nonprofit status has actually allowed us to kind of sit in this middle a lot easier
Yes.
because we're not answering to shareholders, we're not answering to investors, we're not answering to a board that's profit oriented. It gives us time to explore things, try some stuff out, and we can be very open about our failures. Hey, this
Yes.
this isn't working. Can you guys either should we abandon it? Should we fix it? Should we improve it? And it's great that we can go out to our community and just do that.
Yeah. Well, we always love and cherish our community. There's a reason. Everybody's surprised when we talk to somebody new and they say, "Oh, yeah, we have it online as well because it brings a different energy," and it truly does. All right,
Absolutely.
let's talk about let's. What else do you think we missed here? I mean, or didn't go deep enough into?
I really think a lot of people in the audience, when they are asking their questions, a lot of their fear was about, scams and being attacked, but also about AI and the information labor and replacing humans. I mean, even somebody said very smart aleck, when's it going to be the point where I can go to Chat GPT and just hear a panel like this? You know, it,
Well, that's what I brought up Notebook LM,
right?
the podcast. You know, you and I think that member was right to some extent with for what is known. Again, we can if we wanted to have a podcast about, hey, what is AI? I'm sure that AI would give us a podcast on the technical pieces and the capabilities of artificial intelligence. But when we start talking about the other abstract things that go into it, things like, political leanings, can somebody subvert political leanings through the AI answers? Or can we fool somebody into loving an AI as a lost companion? I think those are things reserved just for humans,
Right.
right? In other words, I think it's going to be very difficult for it to create that soul, which what I talked about early in the beginning, and the curiosity and really the epiphanies and the creativity of the human brain and of the soul. I think it's going to be very difficult unless we give into it, right? Where that AI is going to be able to replace us in some ways. Um,
Well, I think one of the critical points of where we are culturally, as far, especially the West, is we've kind of raised knowledge to this pinnacle of of intelligence, if you will. But if we really talk across a lot of different, human groups and things like that, we also know there's yes, knowledge and let's say an intelligence quotient. That's really good at knowledge and how to do things, right? But what about emotional quotient? We even talk about EQ. What about people that have an expressive quotient or an artful quotient? All of these things that really dig down into helping us define, these different intelligences give us a better feel for what is actually true and whether or not we want that truth in our life or how we manage it in our life, that kind of thing.
Well, part of that is their ability to make change our minds.
Oh, absolutely. And being able to respond to it as we get new information, right?
Yes.
Or new experiences even.
The question I was going to ask when that question came up was more about you had told me something about either reading or watching something from somebody that was an expert about why it won't get there or why it won't become Skynet or how, right?
Right.
Because and I wanted to ask that question, but I didn't want to keep making the panel discussion longer. Do you want to recap who that expert was and what they said?
It comes from a couple things. One was I think it's Dr. Topol, and he was talking about AI in the medical industry. And the first thing he pointed out was that 90% of our investment to date in the medical industry has, especially in the IT area, has been for optimizing billing and insurance, right? It's all about that. Well, now with
Comes down to the
AI,
money always.
well, yeah, and but as things, as we kind of became more and more insurance driven to where we are right now, all of that did have to become easier, right? I still think it's not quite there as far as how we divided the responsibilities of the doctors and insurance, but that's a whole nother discussion. But what I like though is that he was pointing out that we can now look at huge swaths of data and we can say, hey, this patient fits this profile. Where else do we see that in the population? What other things do they have in common? What prescriptive things have been done? What therapies have been done to help them? What was the most effective? AI can do that very quickly, and, and in a way too, that doesn't really invade our privacy because we're looking at just all of these markers that have nothing to do with individuals. It's looking at everything as a population.
Well, it's funny. We go back to, I think at the beginning of the conference about what are the other kind of AIs. We all are familiar with Chat GPT. We're familiar with Gemini, the large language models. But again, I said from the big data world, it's just it's night and day what it can do before what versus what we could do before.
Ugh. I mean,
The
just look at the past
analysis.
3 years.
Yes, the analysis or the amount of data that artificial intelligence can crunch at the same time should help our medical and healthcare be more accurate in its diagnosis. Because I've always believed that medicine was really a practice of probabilities.
Yes. Especially when we look at it from our doctors that are, let's say, the clinicians, right? I mean,
Yes,
they basically follow decision trees when you
they
look
do.
at how they do their treatments and decide their treatments. This could be beyond a decision tree because
Yeah,
it's no longer so linear, right?
right. And hopefully that'll, if it's in our homes, it will be monitoring us as well as interacting with us, not only just
Yeah.
creating more, you
Like
know,
our watches, the things we wear.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, I mean, so we might have something in our homes, there's a lot of questions for robotics and daily living, and if they're going to be able to do some of our ADLs, which is like food and wash and clothing and hygiene and things like that. But imagine if it's monitoring, AI is monitoring your behavior and anomalies in your behavior, where there's kind of a double-edged sword there, but at least if without action, it could provide feedback to our healthcare providers that could feed into another model, which would say, hey, this might be an early sign of dementia, or hey, this might be a vitamin D deficiency, or hey, this might be, hey, they're, a pint low on their water, right?
Right.
And all of these things can go, especially if we're kind of constantly monitoring ourselves and doing and feeding into the machine.
Putting cameras in, let's say, refrigerators, just so the AI can tell us, hey, that food should be thrown away. You know, seriously,
Don't come to
right?
our house. No. We find stuff in the back of our fridge all the time, but that's okay. No, you're right. You're right. It's the amount of data and going back again, we got to we're going to lose the people who are listening to us, but we it's so much they can crunch so much data. Artificial intelligence can calculate and crunch so much data. If we just get the inputs in there, we'll be able to be able to come out with new diagnoses and new treatments potentially, right? Or at least
Absolutely.
less intrusive treatments because it might be, instead of, we did a study on with Procter and Gamble on dehydration several years ago and how olders get um, hold less water and retain less water. And so that balance of hydration, for example, is so finite. I mean, it's so close to the edge that if we can monitor even our liquid levels or whatever, that might prevent, hospitalization.
Right. And here's why I really liked where Dr. Topol was taking this to. He says, so now if we have AIs helping doctors, they don't have to spend so much time doing all the data entry about their patient. They can actually sit with their patient because he said the best doctors are high in empathy. And if we
Yes.
can have doctors that can just focus, I mean, the really good ones just sit there with their patients and react with empathy, they can learn so much more about what's really going on with the patient. What are they lifestyle decisions? Are they stressors that are going on in their life? All these things that affect health. And I think that's a very hopeful outlook.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Again, being at the mercy of the big corporation, big pharma, actually, as well, um, and profiting, they want to decrease expenses and increase profit. And by getting to better outcomes and results from your doctor's visits, you'll get better, you'll increase profitability. At least I think they should. At least they
Right.
would, you know. Um, let's change subjects because we got some of this feedback from the conference. Um, I don't think we answered what is AI and how to get started with it.
Not
I
at all.
don't think we did that very well. Well, we could do that better. And of
Uh,
course,
should we make a class or a tech talk about this or two?
yeah, we could do a couple of tech talks on this. We have one on using AI, but I think we can go a little deeper on it. We talk about what it is and then how to get started with it. And I think one of the things that we have to do is ask questions that our audience is interested in. I talk about writing a condolence card from somebody who I didn't really know very well and asking it to put some emotion into it, and it did a great job. But not everybody knows how to do it, and I keep learning more and more the more I use it.
Yes.
But let's kind of go back. I think there's a few. If we talk to Dr. Vanderhuy's open statements, we're currently in the general AI stage, and we won't get into. I'm sorry,
Mm,
we're in the narrow AI right
yeah,
now,
exactly.
not in the general AI. General is going to be more about, Skynet and how, and all that kind of stuff.
But again, it's how
But
we define intelligence before we get to general intelligence, right?
that's right. And so we're at the narrow AI. And just to recap and review, narrow AI are the things that um, it takes inputs. Our inputs are our voice and our words, and goes out and does things. It's the large language model AI that we're working off of. And so that's one type of AI that I think is most common to everybody's top of mind, which is, hey, I can go to ChatGPT. Well, how do you access ChatGPT?
Right.
You, you,
There's multiple ways, but I mean, what's the best way and what's the most, I say the easiest entry?
well, the easiest entry, of course, is opening a browser
Yes.
and
Uh,
searching on
Especially the
ChatGPT.
especially the Edge browser.
Yeah, well, let's just talk about ChatGPT, and I think this is where the confusion comes in,
Right.
because we talk about ChatGPT, and it kind of goes into lots of different things. ChatGPT is a product of itself, but it's also a technology. It's kind of like Kleenex is a brand, but
Right.
the facial tissue is everything, and we always call every facial tissue Kleenex, right?
Right.
Every ChatGPT isn't a product of an itself. So you've got ChatGPT, which is started as a research project and then got monetized to what's ChatGPT 4, or I think it is at this point.
Yes.
And I think it's like $200 a month for the full blown version. But you also have the free version that's available, and you just access that by opening up a browser, Safari or Chrome or Edge or Firefox or whatever, doing a search on ChatGPT, creating an account, a free account, and then starting to work with it.
Right.
Um, we like Google's version of it, which is called Gemini, and you just go to Gemini, you open up a browser again, you go to gemini.google.com, and then you can start talking to it and start asking, and it's an iterative process. And then also Microsoft's Edge, they have their own, which is called Copilot, and it's incorporated into their Edge browser. And it's
Correct.
got the little like swirly things on the upper right hand corner next to the search bar where you can actually start using artificial intelligence there or their
And that
product,
directly
which is called.
links to their licensed version of ChatGPT.
Yes, yes, yes. And so there's lots of different versions of what we call large language models. The most popular, like I said, because it was the first, is ChatGPT, but it's also built into a lot of different pieces that are also branded as a different product. I don't know about you, but I use them for different things. I use Gemini for most of our work stuff just because we are a Google shop because it was easy to get started as a business.
Right.
But I use Copilot for creating pictures. I think it does a much better job in pictures.
Oh, much better. And I like Copilot too when I want to just like do some initial writing. I think it does a more human job of it than Gemini. I think Gemini is really good though at taking diverse pieces of information because I can keep giving it new pieces and it comes
Yes.
back richer and richer.
And so we encourage everybody who's listening or online or comes to our classes or tech talks and just go ahead and try it. There's nothing to lose really, except for one, which we touched on during the conference, which was privacy.
Yes,
And so I think one of the underlying questions is if we use one of the large language models, are they keeping our information? And I think the answer is yes.
yes, they are. And we don't know how they're cleaning that or how much they're keeping. That's really related to us. We don't have a clue yet.
It's really difficult to look through the terms and conditions. We know that Google Gemini is using the information that it gets from us in terms of searches, questions, YouTube views, whatever, goes into a marketing machine which builds cohorts of people.
Yes,
Not necessarily us as a person, Beta as a individual, or Eric as an individual, but we get placed into a cohort of marketing sections that they can advertise to us for.
that's
I
correct.
kind of, while I worry about it, I also get it, and I hopefully trust that they're just taking our information and anonymizing us and putting us into these cohorts. Um, Microsoft says that they do it, their terms and conditions say they do it just to improve the Microsoft products. But I have no idea what ChatGPT is doing.
Yeah, and when we look at those, it's becoming so not ingrained, but it's affecting our or getting access to so many parts of our lives. It's making it so hard to extricate it from us as an individual. Because if you come at it for looking at it from their perspective, they have all this information, they can both deductively and inductively go in the other direction and find who we are. So
They
it's like,
can.
yeah, it's really hard now to say, oh, it's going to be perfectly private.
I think the point is, though, that our information is already out there. Is this making it worse?
Yeah, it's accelerating it.
And so I'm not sure. Other than the fact that I do know that they're keeping and storing all of our information that we give them, um, which has its positives as well. I mean, if we look for a restaurant, for example, on Google Maps, it'll kind of promote the ones that they think we'll like.
Yes, that's not
You know,
necessarily a bad thing.
No, I think it's a good thing. Instead of going to a restaurant that takes us and serves us food that we know we're not going to like. I don't know what kind of extreme examples I want to give, but it tends to know our tendencies of things that we like, just like kind of movie things or other suggestions that it might make or services that it might support or suggest based on our past. I
Right.
think between you and me, though, I think that Google's really confused because due to our tech talks, we're always looking at everything.
It's like, who are these guys?
Flood them with information, right? Flood them with information.
And that might be part of the defensive AI thing. We can have things running that just do random stuff so they can't really pin us down.
So it was interesting though, and I know that Chris was there on the panel, and he
Yeah, he
wasn't
was
there as an
really
Apple
good.
employee. But there is that shift between cloud and on device.
Yes,
And so I think we know that Google's all cloud and we know Apple's all device on device.
right.
But it still has to go out to the cloud to go out and find the results.
Yes. Well, some results can be local, but to get the rich results, it, by definition, has to go outside.
Exactly. And so I guess that the key difference between on device and in the cloud is that the queries or the information stays on our device. That's a question mark. I'm not sure how they do that because um, it would seem to me that every time it goes out, it would have to go out and store that information somewhere in the cloud because our phones don't have enough power to do that.
Right. Well, I thought was interesting that Chris brought up about how how Apple is working with ChatGPT is they are anonymizing it. So similar to how when we buy something using Apple Wallet, even Google Wallets works this way. The transaction never reveals our credit card number. It comes
Yeah,
up with a number that's only for that transaction, and it has nothing to do with our actual card number so that it can't be fraudulently stolen and unused and all that kind of stuff, right? Someone can't get it and use it. I thought it was pretty interesting that they're taking the same approach with the Chat GPT handoff, is that they're anonymizing it in between. And then when
Hmm.
Chat GPT responds, then they take it back the same path and back to us. I thought that was pretty interesting. I didn't know
That
that.
is interesting. We might have to have him come back on and talk a little bit
No,
more about that
I would love to talk with him more.
and see what's going on. And and without him revealing too much, but we could probably talk about just the kind of general concepts of that.
Yeah, and I thought he did a very good job of walking that line because they're very guarded about their secrets, and he was very comfortable talking about the things that he could talk about, and if he couldn't, he just didn't even mention it.
Yeah, no, I mean it was good. Um, Richard Adler was interesting,
Yes,
right? Because
always.
he's spent his whole life talking about technology for seniors. Even when he wasn't a senior, he was talking about technology for seniors.
Yep.
Um, and then, we had Aparna also who has an interesting bend on, healthcare and in-home care and assisted living places.
Yeah, and I
And
thought she had some really cool perspectives of how she thinks it's going to integrate across the how you call it, the assistive care environment.
yeah.
How it could not just coordinate things, but really make for a lot more efficiencies. I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, and Jennifer Kelly had, I was interesting because she is with the or the county of Santa Clara. Um, and usually, I hate to say this, but usually, um, they don't always have the most rosy picture of technology,
Right.
right? But she had a lot of hope for human behavior and interactions with
She,
artificial
I
intelligence.
thought she had a very balanced view, to tell you. I thought it was great. I loved the way that she was trying to, create policy that could both serve and protect. And that's a hard
Yes.
job.
Yeah, it is.
Especially with things changing so fast, because you don't want to pin it down so much that you lose all the benefits, but you can't just let it run crazy either. So I thought it was really neat the balance she's trying to find.
Well, I think also, when the question about are kids going to become automatons,
Right.
right? And she's like, no, they're not. They're going to just learn a different skill.
Yes.
And so again, that's what makes us human. That's the only thing that's going to keep us going forward.
Is she an
Any
attorney?
other? I'm sorry.
Is Jennifer an attorney?
I think so.
I guess, yeah,
I
she
think
had a
so.
because yeah, she had a very cool way of how I put it, formulating her thoughts and expressing them. I mean, she was
Yeah.
very cogent in how she responded to things,
Well, it was a great event. I know that a lot of people came with a lot of questions, and I bet you a lot of them left with even more questions.
which was good.
Yes. And so, I, there's other people who want us to do a similar conversation. This was a kind of a big one for us just because of the number of people and the number of moving parts on that and getting our panelists there. Um, but it was a good thing, I think. I think it opened up the conversation.
Yeah. And that's what we wanted. We want the conversation and we want people to just, go back and think about this stuff and then come back to us, hey, can you go look into this and do a tech talk on this? So I hope that's what
Yeah,
we get.
I hope so too. So, you know, um, again, www.anvcs.org is our website. Come visit us, take these classes or tech talks for free. There's a subject for you if you are interested in technology or having to use it, because I think we all have to use technology now. Um, but I think, we should keep talking about this and putting these, podcasts up there for people to listen to. And, we'll try to get some other people in here and try to broker some different conversations and deeper dives into particular subject areas.
That'd be great.
All right, this is Eric, and
This is Veda.
we're signing off. We'll talk to you at the next Tech Talk or our next podcast. Have a good
Cheers
night.
all.